Live from Johannesburg, this is Tonight with Jane Dutton. It's been weeks of problems for the Democratic Alliance. Can Mmusi Maimane keep the party together ahead of next year's elections? And it's still instilling fear in drivers and passengers alike. Checkpoint goes in depth into taxi violence. And at 9 p.m. we're live in London on the latest after a suspected terror attack. That's Tonight with Jane Dutton. Patricia De Lille's resignation, Athol Trollop's no-confidence vote, and Herman Mashaba's love of Trump. The DA's leader, Mmusi Maimane, has a lot on his plate as he takes his party to the national vote next year. But there are issues in DA-run municipalities and clear divisions within the party. Is Maimane up to this mammoth task? That's my question for the DA leader tonight. What's yours? You can tweet me on hashtag Tonight with Jane Dutton. You can also phone in with your questions. The number is 011-759-6340. But first, the top stories with Shahan.
Thanks, Jane. Appreciate it. The NPA has a new boss just a day after the position became vacant. President Cyril Ramaphosa has appointed Silas Ramaite as the acting National Director of Public Prosecutions. The Constitutional Court ruled yesterday that Sean Abrams' appointment was invalid. It's not the first time Ramaite has acted in this role. He was brought in following Bulelani Ngcuka and Mxolisi Nqasana's resignations in 2004 and 2015, respectively. But the DA is not impressed, saying Ramaite's track record proves he's weak. Justice Minister Michael Masuta is vowing to clean up the State Attorney's Office. Private and state lawyers allegedly colluded to lose cases and split damages. Around 80 billion rand of public money has reportedly been lost. President Ramaphosa ordered a probe into the office last month, but the unit tasked to investigate the allegations is still putting a team together. It says it will need at least 12 months to conduct the investigation.
Where appropriate, and in addition to the investigation by the SIU, disciplinary action as well as criminal investigation will be initiated against alleged perpetrators to ensure that firm action is taken to uproot corrupt activities.
ANC NEC member Zizi Kodwa is defending government's proposed sovereign wealth fund. He says the party backs the president's plan to help boost economic growth. Treasury says 48 billion rand will be needed for this package, but it's not yet clear where that money will come from.
We need an economy that can create, in different sectors of economy, that can create jobs. So we may have, again, this part of this fear factor, that do nothing and just sit as a leadership. But we've got expectation from our people. Our people are jobless. What do we do as a leadership of the African National Congress? We must provide answers. And part of these stimulus packages, part of this sovereign wealth fund is about some of the responses that has been done somewhere in the world and is working.
And police have opened an inquest docket after the co-author of a controversial book was found dead. Mark Minnie apparently died by suicide on the outskirts of Port Elizabeth in the Eastern Cape. Minnie is the co-author of The Lost Boys of Bird Island. It details how 3 former National Party ministers were allegedly central figures in a pedophilia ring that operated during apartheid. They include former Defence Minister Magnus Malan, Environmental Minister John Wiley, and another unknown former minister who is still alive.
The body of the 58-year-old man was found at a small hole in Theescombe last night. He has been identified as Mark Minnie. He was found with a gunshot wound to his head. A firearm was found lying next to him. At this stage, we are investigating an inquest.
Those are the headlines. It's back to Jane.
Thanks for that. Shahan, troublesome tweets, deals in the dark, an apparent shift in economic policies. The DA is South Africa's official opposition party, but now it seems to be losing the grip on major municipalities. One man has to convince South Africans that the DA has its act together. But how can he do that against the backdrop of brand new tweets on colonialism, Patricia De Lille's mysterious departure and its new empowerment ideas? DA leader Mmusi Maimane is my guest tonight. And let me just remind you, you can call in with questions for him. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much for having me.
I've laid it out on the plate. We've got lots to talk about. Let's talk about the white elephant in the room, Helen Zille's latest tweets about colonialism. What was your response? What happened there?
Well, firstly, I think I've always maintained that I disagree fundamentally with Helen Zille on the tweets around colonialism. I think it's a system that oppressed many South Africans, many people all over the world. And I think without doubt, that subject is now a question of, as has been reported, to the hate crimes to the Equality Court, and we'll await the outcome of that. But what's more important is that we're focused as an organization about saying, how do we build one South Africa for all? How do we bring all people together? And that's the focus of the organization. And so certainly from our view, we're allowing the Equality Court to continue with that process.
Is this a conversation that you would have with her? Would you call her up and say, what's going on here?
It's certainly something that we've disagreed on. And if you can recall, when the tweet took place, we then removed Helen Zille from all positions of leadership within our own organization because we believe in the principle of accountability. And now, as a party, we're focused on the elections going into next year. We focus on communicating our message of hope and South Africa for all. And that's our fundamental focus. It's simply something that I believe that all public reps within the Democratic Alliance are focused on.
Okay, before we leave this, and I just want to bring up the tweet just in case some of the viewers didn't see it today. This is what she said. Do you genuinely believe the legacy of colonialism is only negative? Then let's scrap the Constitution, including concepts such as the separation of powers. Let's scrap formal education institutions, the English language, etc. She apologized after last year's tweeting, also supporting colonialism. So she knows it's wrong.
Well, I think that's what I'm saying. It's a subject of the hate crime of the Equality Court now. And I think without doubt, it's not for me to sit here and be able to speak about her views on colonialism. I can only speak about what the DA does and what the DA stands for. The views there are not the views of the DA.
Considering her importance, this sort of message will resonate, and it says a lot about the party.
It does. It doesn't say anything about the party. What it simply says is that Helen Zille has espoused a view. What I'm simply saying to you is that we believe the system of colonialism oppressed many people. We hold the absolute view that says that our primary focus is that we've got to focus on the future of all citizens. And that's a principal position that we've taken, and we're moving ahead of that. And that's where the party is focused on.
And what does it say about her respect for you, considering that she apologized last time? What you mentioned a little bit earlier on, you said that, Helen has agreed it's the best interest of the party for her to vacate her position, and that if she wishes to communicate on any other political issues, she will abide by the sign of process and protocols of the DA.
Yeah, it's certainly something we don't agree on. I don't stand with her on this particular issue, and I've certainly will make a very clear stance on the fact that I think that we need to shift away from this particular discussion. It's not the job. I don't think that it brings into any relationship that between her and me. All my primary issue with it is the fact that let the Equality Court deal with the matter, and let's move on from there.
And it certainly plays into the narrative, and I know you're going to roll your eyes, that, the fact that you are just a black puppet leader, that, the executive is white and you do their bidding. Is that true?
I've never heard biggest insult to black South Africans. I think that there's a primary view that seems to suggest that someone, on the basis of the color of their skin, should ultimately be in charge, which I think is the worst insult we can give to South Africans.
I think it was more that South Africans feel that somebody else is calling the shots.
That, without doubt, is that we've made a decision. I took a stance against Helen Zille. I have already made our views and our proclamations on it done. And I think ultimately, as I said, the matter has gone. It's got a public protector investigation on it. My position is to focus on leading the people in the DA who are committed to focusing on our message and where we want to go, which is the idea of building one South Africa for all that opens up opportunities. That is the only focus. And ultimately, that, for me, from where I stand, is what my expectation would be of all people who are serving in the Democratic Alliance.
Let's talk about another troublesome tweet that came out through the mayor of Johannesburg, Herman Mashaba, praising Donald Trump for his abilities as a politician, and said, he was far better than Cyril Ramaphosa. But this is a man who just today called a black woman a dog. I mean, that, again, it's not a good message. You can't support somebody who has that sort of view, and we know what his views are like.
Donald Trump certainly is espousing values in the world that I do not stand for, I do not support. Donald Trump is certainly standing up for xenophobic tendencies, racist tendencies, and these are things that we as a party do not stand for. I've requested that Herman Mashaba retract and remove that tweet, because it certainly
Which he has done, but the damage is done, isn't it?
Inconsistent with where we stand for. But Jane, what I want to highlight is this, is that I could spend every day looking at every public rep's tweets, etc. I've also got to assess them on the basis of what they're doing. Are they performing in their government? Are they doing the job of actually why they were elected in those cities? And when I reflect on whether the city of Joburg is improving or not improving, it becomes very clear that Herman Mashaba is delivering for poor South Africans. Herman Mashaba is doing the job of ensuring that citizens are safer, ensuring that ultimately job creation has been created. When you look at the Western Cape's own track record, 75% of all the new jobs that have been created in South Africa have been created in the Western Cape. And so our principle, my assessment of what we do as a political party, is about ensuring that those who are put in government, in fact, do their jobs. In fact, deliver for the people.
People in that position should be holding the moral high ground. They cannot be tweeting randomly, accusing people of all sorts of things. They need to know their position. It doesn't, just because you're good at your job doesn't mean you can behave badly.
Nobody's saying that, and that's why it's our request that we hold everybody accountable. That's why I've requested that he retracts that tweet and, in fact, ensures that he doesn't stand in support of the views of Mr. Trump.
Okay, you touched on what you see as your success in these municipalities. One of our journalists today did a story, Nicholas Bauer, on the problems that Johannesburg is facing from a billing point of view. I mean, you made promises that you would improve facilities, you would improve services. Where is that proof?
It is numerical. We mustn't just simply go on basis of sentiment. Here's the most crucial issue. When we inherited the billing crisis, we're talking about over 170,000 inaccurate bills, thanks to an ANC's maladministration. We've now reduced those to below 15,000. When we inherited Johannesburg, we had 170 billion rands worth of infrastructure backlog. The city of Johannesburg spends 10 billion rands a year to address that. So we have a 17-year backlog. When we inherited the city of Johannesburg, we had already 15 billion rands of South Africa's taxpayers' money was being stolen thanks to corruption, an organization that had sat for many years and stolen it. What have we done in addressing those? One, we've now tabled a budget that in fact is able to be funded. Secondly, we began to deliver basic services, particularly to poor South Africans. And here's some of the crucial proof points. If you went with me to Alexandra today, South Africans there did not have a clinic, and now today they even have a clinic that works over extended hours. This is the provision of basic healthcare services. When you look at the jobs, in the latest quarterly labor force report, it indicates the fact that Joburg's net new jobs have improved better than what they have done before. When it comes to the question of justice for poor South Africans, we've delivered more title deeds to the people of Johannesburg than we've done before. So ultimately, but still, the fight requires that we focus on what did we promise the people to do? Are we going to ensure that there's an environment that creates work for the people? Are we going to ensure that, in fact, we deliver basic services? Are we going to eradicate corruption? On the basis of those three things, the city of Johannesburg is doing.
Well, it seems to be going very slowly. And I just want to say that apparently our phone line, we're having problems with our phone line. So if you've been trying to call in, we're not ignoring you. And as soon as we resolve that problem, we will be back on it. I mean, the figures are still staggering. You say 15,000 people are still affected by this. You're hearing about businesses collapsing because of, electricity problems, and the list goes on. What sort of timeline are you working to in order to address this?
It's not perfect. We want to get it right, and we're working with a massive backlog, and we're working as hard as we're working harder than any other government. Certainly, I look at the city of Johannesburg and the complexities that go with it. They're working extraordinarily hard. But you must understand where we started from, and you must appreciate the fact that we're making progress. I'm not here to simply say everything is now perfect in Johannesburg. For example, fixing traffic lights is a question of a 5 billion rands infrastructure investment. That is money that the city has to be able to collect, be able to put into the budget cycle so that we can deliver for that. Let me give you another practical example. When it comes to the safety of motorists here, When you used to drive around the city of Johannesburg, it was very clear about the fact that actually the Metro Police was dysfunctional, we weren't collecting revenue, and people could just simply break the law. We've added a whole number of policemen that have come on board, and more crucial than that, we're ensuring that we're asking our citizens to be safer, particularly people in townships and communities where in fact drugs are ravaging our streets. We're asking the Metro Police to deal with it.
It'll be good to see when it starts picking in, because it's not obvious.
And I think actually in other indicators, when you look at other municipalities that DA has taken over through DA-led coalitions, the indicators are starting to show that in fact they're rising up. Their audit opinions are improving, and actually the level of delivery is improving
but we've had
significantly.
problems in the Western Cape. I mean, I know you've been running that for a while. In Nelson Mandela Bay, I mean, the problem's happening there. What about Trollop? How can he continue to operate considering the lack of support? I mean, I know you support him. I know you think that he's done a good job, but your partners don't.
No, I think we must remind ourselves, what is the nature of a coalition? Coalitions are designed and set up at local government to deliver budgets, make sure that they set up the dreams of the people through an IDP, and then they ultimately make sure that they deliver services. Nelson Mandela Bay had a high level of buckets that Ethel Trollop and his team have worked to deliver. It never had a Metro Police, now it has one. There are never buses in Nelson Mandela Bay, now there are buses, telling you that we deliver for the people. Now, if you've got a problem...
such a good job that they're constant votes of no confidence against him.
The vote of no confidence... Where did the vote of no confidence emerge from? The vote of no confidence was started when the EFF made it quite clear that they want to cut the throat of whiteness. To remove a South African out of an executive office because of the color of their skin is not something that has to deal with delivery. It's just blatant racism.
Okay, well, this is a man who's got no support, so it's going to undermine any work going forward. How are you going to resolve this situation?
That's not accurate.
And where does your relationship go to from here with the EFF? Can you still rely on them?
The EFF have always agreed that they will vote with us on an issue-by-issue basis, and where it's worked very well. It's worked well in Joburg, it's worked well in Tshwane. In Nelson Mandela Bay, they took a view that they don't like a person because of their race. In fact, all these other coalition partners that are now coming on board, what is their unity? If you read Crispin Olivier's book on how to steal a city, it describes in very articulate details how the ANC stole Nelson Mandela Bay. Now I'm struggling to understand, if you want to move a motion of no confidence because you can cobble together people, I must only raise the fact that their primary interest would not be in good governance or clean governance or delivering for people. It would be fundamentally to ensure that they can loot some more resources. And that must be a concern for all citizens. It's not a confidence in the DA.
Okay, so
it's a confidence in the need for corruption.
I can understand why you would want to keep the ANC out there. But let's go back to your relationship with the EFF. Is the DA's success there because of its relationship with the EFF and riding on its coattails? Do you think that they have delivered more than you've delivered for them? And what is your future without the EFF? Because Jane, that's on shaky ground too.
The coalition, we're not in a coalition with the EFF. The EFF had made it quite clear they'll vote with us on an issue-by-issue basis. The coalition there has been between the Congress of the People, the African Christian Democratic Party, the Democratic Alliance, and ultimately we'll work with any new partners who are committed to this dream. And this is the dream, that we build one South Africa for all. We're not going to work with, obviously the EFF says they can't stand Ethel Trollop because they want to cut the throat of whiteness. So clearly we can't work on that basis. And if it's a question of saying, are we going to talk about land or anything like that, we must be clear. We are here to defend the interests of all South Africans, regardless of the color of their skins. And so we can't coalesce around that. And so what's important to note is that going forward, that coalition is working. It is working across the country. So what are you saying?
Is it working or isn't it? And can you still rely on them considering...
It's not the EFF only. It's working with other political parties.
Yeah, but they've got the clout. I mean, where's your relationship with them when it comes to land? You have opposing positions on land. Your recent comments about BEE, that didn't go down well with them. What sort of impact is that likely to have?
We have complete differences on the issues of land, and I'll tell you why. Because I sit here today as a child who grew up in Soweto, and my parents couldn't own a house under apartheid because ultimately that land belonged to the state. Why should we go back to that system? Why should we go back to a place where the state owns the land? Why should we go back to a place where we amend the constitution because people have been corrupt and have been incapable, thanks to what Kgalema Motlanthe is saying? So these positions are important. Forming a coalition with someone or working with someone on an issue-by-issue basis is not a question of surrendering your principles. Otherwise, what's the point? It's about standing up for what you believe in.
What I'm asking you is how much can you rely on them going forward if you need them to maintain what you have secured, considering your position on land and BEE?
On an issue-by-issue basis, municipalities don't expropriate land. They simply deliver title deeds,
So you
which
can't
is what we
rely on them
focused
at all,
on.
I think that's what
No,
you
no,
might be
no.
saying.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that where we agree on issues, which the reason we've passed budgets is that there are things that we agree on. We agreed on the passing of the budget that is pro-poor, and therefore we vote together. We agree on the fact that we'll eradicate corruption, therefore we vote together. We agree on issues that ensure that we'll clean out the administration so that more people get opportunities. Where we agree, let's vote together. Where we don't, and we find ourselves in a space where they would ask us to compromise a very fundamental principle, the idea that we actually want individual South Africans to own land in their rights, particularly black South Africans who've been left out. We would never compromise that, because to compromise on that would be the collapse of our economy, and we want redress to be done for the people of South Africa, particularly those who are left out.
And is this message being heard? Because if you look at the Ipsos poll, which was released in July,
Yes.
it says 6 in every 10 South African adults of voting age chose the ANC. I mean, that's quite an increase from the past. Are you worried about that? You must be worried about that. Is this the Ramaphosa factor? What do you put it down to?
Well, I'm worried, and I'm worried. I'll tell you why I'm worried. Not because of what the opposition is doing or what the DA is doing. I'm worried that we might end up in a situation similar to Zimbabwe, in the sense that you can change the outer shell of an organization and ignore the fact that inside it is still patronage, is still corruption. The ANC has not changed. It's still the same ANC. It's the same ANC that's allowed over 10 million South Africans. Now, the broad expanded definition of unemployment is now sitting at about 12 million people who cannot find work.
Despite that,
This is
the
a concern
popularity is
for me.
on the rise.
So what we mustn't do is, the only reason they're putting Cyril Ramaphosa up is for electoral purposes. What South Africans
Well,
need
why
to
wouldn't
learn,
you do that? I mean, that's what every party wants to do, is to win.
what South Africans
Put the
must
right
learn
man
in
for the
that
job.
ends is that they must come out and hold the ANC to account. That's what they must do. They must recognize that for their future, for their ability
And how do
to
they
create
hold
work,
the ANC to account?
come out and
Voting for
vote.
the DA.
Vote for change. Because we need the change in South Africa that teaches the ANC that, in fact, they can't act with impunity.
But
They've
how are you
acted.
going
How are we
to
going to
get that
ensure?
change if fewer people are voting for you?
I actually disagree. I actually think that, as we saw in 2016, people turned out to the polls and we removed the ANC in the major metros. And I'm willing to sit here
That's
today and
because of
say,
your relationship
come
mainly with the EFF.
come 2019, more South Africans will come out and vote. And I'm asking them to say, bring the change to hold the ANC to account. Because if they don't, they will continue to act with impunity and capture the state like they did the last time. ZANU-PF are doing the same in Zimbabwe. Don't think that the ANC is incapable of doing likewise here in South Africa by just continuing their legacy of corruption.
Okay, I hear what you are saying, but how are you going to do that with the little support that you have? I mean, what are you going to do in order to become a real competitor for the ANC? Because it's not going well, according to the Ipsos poll, and a range of people.
As you know.
Yeah, and I know you disagreed with the Ipsos poll, but
Not just me. Many people disagreed with the Ipsos.
okay, well, not the people that they spoke to. So clearly something needs to be done. I mean, other than saying, don't vote for the ANC unless you want corruption to continue.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
What else are you, I mean, your BE
We-
policy hasn't gone down well. You've just said we're going to change it.
Well, let me give you the great news. The DA is the only party that's building a vision for all South Africans. We're the only party. All the other parties have given up on that vision. The vision of black people, white people, Indian people, colored people working together. That's all gone. The DA is the only offer that will put that together. Second to that, we're going to focus on the economy. And more than the conversation about BBBEE, which I'm happy to discuss in a moment, but what I think we must talk about is, how do we create jobs? How do we create more jobs for people? And that's why I show you that, in fact, where we govern, jobs are being created. Those that are more in micro-enterprise that's coming forward. We want to focus on city-led economic development. That's got to be the focus. Thirdly, how do we make sure citizens are safe? Our people are running around in our communities right now and are feeling unsafe. And so we want to ensure that we've got an effective police service that will actually come back and deal with the question of crime. And then ultimately, how do we eradicate corruption? So our stance is that, as a party, we stand for increased job creation. ensuring that we've got an honest police service that can serve for more people. We want to ensure that more than anything, we eradicate corruption wherever we govern, because it's the cancer that's destroying our prospect.
Okay,
and then
all
lastly,
of those policies, all of that sounds very good. But again, you need to have the belief of South Africans, and you have troubles at play within the party that show deep divisions. I mean, look at the tweets that came out when you announced your BE or walking away from BE. I mean, that shows divisions amongst the highest command within the party. Sure. When the Patricia De Lille saga, how that played out, people feel that they are not getting questions answered. They feel that there's a corruption issue bubbling away in the party. You need to deal with those first.
Jane, on the question of corruption, we're the only party that actually took direct action with a publicly elected mayor. You show me other parties that do that. Because when it's a question of corruption, often people say, well, let's deal with the officials. And here,
didn't you rather hush her up, frightened of maybe what she's going to say?
What we've done is we've withdrawn
Why didn't
charges.
you let her have a day?
Patricia De Lille has resigned, and all the other processes that are taking place in council will continue to do likewise. But here's the other thing that I want to ask us to focus on. We do it in the interest of the people of Cape Town. Always place the citizens above any other thing, and not shy away from it.
In the interest of the party. I mean, obviously, I know you've got to protect your interests in order to perform, but I mean, she was shattering the party, and there were growing divisions, and people again were angry. They felt that they weren't getting answers. There was no transparency.
I want to speak to you about this discussion you're having about these divisions, particularly when it comes to the issue of redress. The DA is unanimous in its belief for redress. It's unanimous in the belief that actually black South Africans suffered under apartheid, and that still today, race is a proxy for disadvantage. We are unanimous in rejecting the ANC's model of triple BEE. And I think we're not the only ones saying it. There are more people saying it, because what it's done, it's benefited a few at the expense of the many. The fourth thing that we all agree on is the fact that we need a review of that so that it actually benefits citizens, so that actually we can ensure that there is wealth transfer, even if just a simple intervention. If you put a contribution towards black South Africans' pension, you can then ensure that they transfer wealth from one generation to the next, which was the project of apartheid, to disrupt wealth transfer from one generation to the next.
And I think we're going to have to leave it there. I'm sorry to
cut you. It's about making sure more people are included, not less. That's the power of what we're trying to achieve.
Mmusi Maimane, very good to talk to you. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Up next, we head live to the US, where US President Donald Trump is in the doghouse.